So social media will say, you're not enough. You don't look like someone else. Everyone is thinner, taller, better dressed. So the not enoughness is an epidemic that's making people very ill. I mean, we know that because in Turkey and also in Fiji, they had very low incidence of eating disorders in women, almost minimal, until they got television. And they found within 3 years in both countries, when these villages got TV, they had an epidemic of anorexia, bulimia, eating and dieting, because we go, oh, I should look like that, but I don't, so I'm going to have to change myself.
So we tried to kind of all these tests.
I retired, and obviously, but thankfully,
All right, welcome back. It's a brand new episode of Tell Me Why, and with me today is Marisa Peer, who's an award-winning therapist and a best-selling author, and I feel like there are so many other things that I need to mention, but I'm going to give you the mic to introduce yourself as well. So, but before we get started, I was just speaking to the team, and I heard that you recently moved to Dubai.
Yeah, we moved here last November, so almost a year already. Wow. It's gone so quickly.
And how are you liking it so far?
We love it. We were living in LA for 6 years, and we never planned to come here. I just came here for work.
Okay.
By the time we were leaving, we went, oh, I think we should move here. So we did.
Amazing.
And it was very impulsive, but it's really worked out.
I think it's worth it. I mean,
definitely.
I would say. And LA is not so different than Dubai, I feel like, with the
LA is
weather
not so different. You can walk around everywhere, but other than that, it's not so different.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so Marisa, tell us a bit more about what you do. I mean, especially when it comes to rapid transformational therapy. I want to get that right. RTT, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about that. What is it, and is it new, or are people just not aware of it?
It is new. A lot of people are aware of it. So I've been a therapist my entire adult life. And when you're a therapist, even though your training is great, your best teachers are, of course, your own clients, because they teach you a lot. And my clients taught me very quickly they were all in pain. They might have physical pain from an emotional source, like tension, headaches, or irritable bowel. Or they might have an emotional pain because they couldn't find love, or they procrastinate or self-sabotage. When you're in pain, you have one goal: get me out of pain as fast as you possibly can. So if I went to the emergency room or the dentist in pain, I'd expect them to take me out of pain.
Right.
And therapy doesn't take people out of pain. It invites you to have a long relationship and get to know each other over time. And I didn't really understand that. I mean, I do understand it, but when you're in pain, don't you just want to be out of pain the same day? People haven't got time to wait to form a long relationship and come every week at 4 o'clock. And so I created a therapy that was like going to the emergency room and got you out of pain fast. It's called rapid transformational therapy because it's rapid, but it's very transformational. It does everything you might do in 10 years of therapy in 2 or 3 sessions.
Wow. Okay. And what does it include? I mean, what do you do?
What therapy does is therapy either invites you to come in and find out what's happened to you, or therapy might invite you to come in and fix you. RTT does, it's like being a detective, a dentist, and a coder. The detective goes back and finds out what's wrong, what happened to you. The dentist draws out all the old stuff, and the coder puts in something new. So I'll give you a great example. I was working with a very famous designer who just would get in a complete panic every time he had to design. He couldn't understand it. He was very famous. He had lots of awards. But he said, every time I go to design, I get a headache. I feel sick. I get anxious. And in his session, he remembered being a little boy, and every time he drew women's dresses, his father would get really angry and go, don't do that. That's not for a man to do. And he would throw them in the fire. But the mother would come in and go, oh, I love the dresses, darling. We just do it all in secret. So now he's got a very conflicting belief. Designing is pleasurable and painful. I'm terrified, but I like it. And so once you can get that information, you can go back and reason with the brain, look, this makes perfect sense for a 7-year-old boy, but for a grown-up man, it's no longer appropriate to act in fear. This is all exciting. So you find out what happened, you kind of renegotiate with the brain why it's playing that old scenario, and then you put in a new scenario which says things like, you love designing, you're such an amazing designer. When you're with clients, you're so confident, you're composed. And that all worked for him immediately in one session. He didn't need more. And he said, I've had this problem for 30 years, and I just didn't know why it was there. But he sort of did know because he knew he had the fear, but didn't know what to do about it. So we have 2 things. Why do I do that? Why do I drink? Why do I scream at my kids? Let's find out why. But knowing why doesn't always stop. People say, I know why I drink. I know why I self-sabotage. So we've got to do both together, find out why and fix it all in the same session.
Exactly. And I think that's why people come to you, because they might know the reason, but they just don't know how to fix it. I mean...
Yeah, and a lot of them don't know the reason, but a lot of them do. But knowing it doesn't mean you're going to fix it.
Of course. And it could be an even heavier burden knowing the reason but not being able to fix it.
Well, that's very frustrating. I know why I keep binging on food. And I'm so overweight because I can't stop it, which is very painful.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so you've worked with a lot of celebrities, and I know that you've seen, different profiles, different, childhood experiences that have affected these adults, later in life, as you mentioned with the famous fashion designer. What are some other people that you've worked with? I mean, without revealing too much, obviously, or any names. I just mean, like, is there like a criteria that people need to have?
Not really. I work with a lot of Olympic athletes, and they come in because they want to get better. And you see, the mind is very clear. When you see something, you make it real. So we know that Roger Bannister, who is a runner, was told you couldn't run a mile in under 4 minutes, but he saw it over and over again. He saw himself going through that ticker tape. But when he did that, the next year, 57 more people did it too. Mark Spitz, I think in the 1984 Olympics, won every medal. And now you can't get in the team swimming at that speed because it's not good enough. So when you move to your potential, it expands. Your potential expands as you move towards it. So if you're an Olympic athlete or a performer or a singer or a writer or anyone who's doing something in that area, when you tap into the subconscious mind, you can get the potential to expand. You can have someone do more. So I see a lot of athletes who want to really win and have that winning edge, but you have to have phenomenal self-belief to win, especially in sport, because a lot of competition. I might see someone who's writing, but who's got writing block or a fear of speaking in public, incredibly common. And so for some people, they're very talented, but they have these blocks. And they also have this, well, I'm getting paid so much for this, and it's so easy, therefore I don't really deserve it, therefore I should just get rid of it all. So that's something interesting, working with that level. And then, I work with everybody. I might work with someone who's a baker or a school teacher who can't sleep or bites their nails or has panic attacks or has something else. I might work with someone right at the high end, a huge CEO who's pulling off a major deal and wants to have, again, that extraordinary self-belief.
Right. I love that you mentioned that, because I feel like that feeling of I'm enough or I'm good at this, it's a challenge that everyone faces. I mean everyone in terms of celebrities or athletes or even teachers. I mean, it's the whole spectrum. Everyone has this battle of, am I good enough? Am I doing the job right?
Yeah. Am I worth it?
Am I worth it? Yeah. Exactly.
Am I worth it?
And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to develop, that confidence in their skills. I want you to tell me a bit more about that. I mean, did you find that some cases were challenging to get rid of that?
I found very quickly with my clients, very early in my career, that the real crux of their problems came back to that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not attractive enough.
Exactly.
I'm not educated enough. There are so many ways to feel not enough. So I saw that as the common denominator of our issues. So alcoholics, if you don't feel enough, you need more. Mm-hmm. More drink, more cake, more medication, more stuff to buy. So when you don't feel you're enough, I've never met an alcoholic who ever felt they weren't good enough. I've never met an addict of anything who ever felt they were good enough. But the interesting question is, where does that come from? I mean, my daughter's just had a little baby. He's the most delightful 4-month-old, amazing little thing. And he knows he's enough. He's very happy to wake the whole house up at 3 a.m. There's no problem throwing up all over the white clothes that she's just put him in.
Yeah.
Because, he's obviously very loved and he knows he's enough. But most babies know they're enough. If you took home a newborn baby and shut it in a cupboard, it wouldn't just accept it. It would cry for hours. Because babies have a belief, I'm here. And you're going to look after me, because in the womb, all your needs are met. It's always warm. You have 24-hour room service. Someone's always there. There's someone's heartbeat. So you know. So a baby's born with an expectation. Here I am, and you're going to meet all my needs. And so the interesting thing is what happens, where do we go from there to I'm not enough, and how quickly, and it can be very quickly. By the time we're 3 or 4, we can believe we're not enough, and it comes from being compared. You don't really see that in tribes.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent a lot of time in Africa, and you don't really see that with tribes because they don't have this. Your sister, she could read when she was 4. Your brother was so good at maths. Oh, they didn't get food on the floor. They were so neat and tidy. And then you go to school and they do something I think is terrible, which is called streaming. So imagine if you're not in the top stream. What does that say to you? It says, I am less than.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the C stream. And you're in the A stream, so you're better than me, and I'm not as good as you. So the streaming, the comparing. Now we have something even more powerful at making us feel not enough, which is called social media. We've always had magazines and newspapers and TV shows, but now you can go on a site and ask them to grade you, to rate you. And so social media will say, you're not enough. You don't look like someone else. Everyone is thinner, taller, better dressed, and has more money than you. So the not enoughness is an epidemic that's making people very ill. I mean, we know that because in Turkey and also in Fiji, they had very low incidence of eating disorders in women, almost minimal, until they got television. And they found within 3 years in both countries, when these villagers got TV, they had an epidemic of anorexia, bulimia, eating disorders, and dieting, because we go, oh, I should look like that, but I don't, so I'm going to have to change myself.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was very interesting how both countries had the same statistics.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that it's an epidemic. I mean, how do you tackle that? There's so much damage that you need to fix.
Well, you see my bracelets will say I'm enough. I created something called the I'm Enough movement, and we have an I'm Enough movement, and we take it into schools, and we give people these bracelets, and we tell people you're enough. Don't compare yourself to anyone because you have your own gift, your own talent. We're doing with a lot of schools here in Dubai, and it's a wonderful thing. We have something where each child draws a cheerleader, and they imagine they're installing it in their head. And I'll say things like, he believes in me. When no one else believes in me, my cheerleader tells me I'm good and I can do it. And it's really a wonderful thing to see how you can raise a child's self-esteem. You can definitely diminish a child's self-esteem. You can also raise it. And by the way, a job of a parent and a school, that's your job, to raise a child's self-esteem. And you do it in certain ways. You do it by pointing out, you're really good at that. You're very good at science, or you're really good with animals, or you're so kind to your granddad, or you're so good at helping Mummy cook in the kitchen. It doesn't matter what it is. But you make it, this is your gift. You're really good at that. You praise them a lot. You're present with them a lot. And when they do something wrong, you don't criticize them. You criticize the action. So you don't say, you're an idiot because you spilt the juice. You say, darling, when you're carrying juice across the carpet, you've got to look at the juice, not the television. So you say that was a mean thing you did to hit your brother, as opposed to you're a mean person.
Right.
Because children understand you criticizing the event, but not them. But we tend to criticize them, and then they get very confused and think they're not enough. And the problem is for a child, the minute they feel that you don't love them, they don't stop loving you, they stop loving themselves immediately. Right. A child can't say, my mum's sad, my dad's angry, my dad's drinking, my mum can't get a job. They can only go, oh, she's unhappy, must be my fault. Because a child will always try, because they can't control what's going on, they'll always bring it back to themselves in an effort to control it.
Right.
I think really, if I'm good, if I'm better, if I'm smarter, it'll all be okay. But it isn't, because it was never the child's fault, ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like labels are one of the most difficult things that a child can get rid of. I mean, once they're labeled something at a young age, it sticks.
I say that a lot in my books. When you label someone, you limit them. Even a good label, you're so good.
Right.
You're so beautiful. You're so generous. It's like, oh, and now I've got to be that all the time. So even you're a genius for a child is a limiting label.
Right. And it puts a lot of pressure on them because they constantly have to prove it right.
Of course.
I mean, they want to live up to that label.
They have to live up to that label.
Exactly. I listened to a podcast recently, and a psychologist was saying that sometimes a child's self-esteem is also affected by their parents, meaning I could give my child the confidence they need. I could praise them. But if I'm always self-critical, that affects their self-esteem as well.
Yeah, a lot of studies show that for a child to be happy, they need something. A happy mother, funnily enough. In the beginning, a happy mother in the house is very linked to the child's self-esteem. Because imagine an unhappy mother who's sad or crying or sick, always has headaches, then how can the child be happy? Because like if you were on an aeroplane with your child, the child will look at mummy and say, how's mummy reacting to flying? Oh, she likes it. Flying. If mummy is anxious and nervous, flying's not a good thing. A child will look at a mother, if there's a dog in the room, and how's mum with the dog? And that's how the child will be. So mothers who have issues and fears and phobias. I'm just working with someone now, a mother with a fear of flying, and her child's got the same fear because she learnt it. A wonderful mother, by the way, an amazing person. But children pick up the fears of the parents.
Absolutely.
How can they not?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the major things that I could relate to. I mean, there was an example that was mentioned where a mother was always critical of her looks, and she just didn't feel like she was pretty enough, or always felt like her figure wasn't flattering, and she always fixated on how short she is. And her daughter grew up with those same
and so a mother who's always on a diet, what does that say?
Exactly.
You've got to punish your body and deprive yourself and always eat salads, and you've got to really fight to be attractive, and that's a terrible thing.
Absolutely. So then how do you help a person rediscover themselves? How do you help them break those shackles?
Well, there's several ways. One is to go back and have a look at what happened. And of course, what happens to you, it's not what happens, it's how you feel about what happens.
Absolutely.
How you interpret what happens and the meaning you put on what happens will shape your entire life. So the child's meaning is, that happened. I didn't have a dad because I wasn't good enough. When you go back and go, look, darling, your dad had you when he was 19. You should have been gifted a grown-up dad, but you weren't. You were gifted a dad who was growing up right next to you, and you're smarter than him. You're more mature than your father. And that was a great shame. But today, you don't need a grown-up dad. So it's doing something, saying, look, all these scenes, whatever you come up with, they were relevant, and any kid would have felt the way you felt at that time. But today, they're not relevant. They're not appropriate. They're not even necessary because they're behind you. So it isn't trying to change the past. I'll give you a great example. I was working with someone whose mother had died, and she was a scientist, very bright. And she kept saying, I need my mum and I miss her. And I said, darling, you don't need your mother. I want you to stop saying, I want you to say, I miss my mother, but I don't need her. Because no woman of 45 actually needs her mother. You may love her, you may want her, but you do not need a mother. At 45, want is different to needs. Instead of saying, I need her and I miss her, I want you to go, I miss her and I don't need her. I love her, I miss her, I don't need her. And she said, that's so amazing, because I didn't realize how needy I was by saying that. It wasn't even true, darling. The truth is, you don't need a mother at 40 or even at 30. It's lovely to have one. But if your mother went to live in Australia and you saw her once every 3 years, it wouldn't really affect your life. So it's reframing everything. Children are dependent. Adults are independent. We're not dependent children in our 40s, but we think we are because we use the wrong language patterns. We give ourselves the wrong, my dad, I've got to please him. That will upset my mum. I need to make them proud of me. And the truth is, you really don't. You need to make you proud of you. As a therapist, I always wanted to simplify therapy. It shouldn't be long and complicated and complex. And by the way, the brain isn't complex either. It's also quite simple. So when we're born, we have very simple needs. We need to feel safe, secure, significant, and loved. And you'd think that would be an easy thing to pull off. But imagine you're in daycare or you have a nanny and they don't make you feel loved. So for a child, when those very simple needs aren't met, two things happen. They go through life thinking, that's never going to be met. I'm never going to be loved. I'm never going to be significant. I'm never going to be connected. Or they go through life saying, I'm going to find someone, and they're going to make me feel loved, safe, connected, and significant. And they're both wrong, because a lot of people give up. They get some pets, they live alone, and they say, no, I'm always going to have a dead-end job, and I've given up on love. So they have a belief my needs will never be met, and I'm living with that. Or they have a belief, I'm going to give someone else my needs. But if that someone else even does that and meets your needs, what happens when they get sick? or they have their own needs. So the answer is, can you meet those needs yourself? And the answer is yes. Can you feel safe and significant and connected and loved? Because if you can start to work on your own needs and almost parent yourself, you'll then become the person you would become if you had amazing parents who knew how to raise you. Even if you hadn't got that, it's never too late to go back and put in what a great parent would have put into you.
Yeah.
What would a great parent say? I mean, this is not rocket science. They'd say, well, how lucky I am to have you. You're a great kid. I'm proud of you. And I was recently working with a 17-year-old boy who was probably going to end up in jail because he was very violent, very aggressive. And when I saw him, I said, you're just a hurt kid. And he said, nobody cares about me. His parents had broken up when he was a baby, gave him to the father's very elderly parents who really couldn't raise him. They did their best. But he felt so unwanted. And I said, I'd love to give you a great dad, but I can give you the next best thing. What would a great dad say? Of course, he went, I don't know. I said, but you do know. A great dad would say, I'm proud of you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. So let's say it. Of course, he thought that was utterly stupid, but he said it. And at the end, he was a different person because it's what I call the missing words, the things you never heard. You don't have to wait. You can start to say them yourself. I matter. I'm significant. I'm enough. It's what we're doing in the school system here in Dubai, having kids every day. I matter. I'm enough, I'm significant, I'm smart. And of course, when someone else says it, you think, oh, what do you want? But when you say it, the brain goes, well, this must be true because you say it so much.
Absolutely.
And it makes such a difference.
How does it resonate with children? I feel like children are... do you feel like they're easier or more difficult to work with?
So easy. They live in a world where, if someone is 7 or 8, they don't have to really go back in time to see what happened. So children are very easy to work with. They're very influenced by what they see on the news and what their friends tell them. But it's very easy to excite a child's imagination. The way you feel about everything comes down to just 2 things: the pictures you make in your head and the words you say to yourself. And so when children make the wrong words and pictures, I don't have any friends, I'm not good at math, then they feel terrible. For instance, I'll give an example. I was working with a school recently and I put on the floor in a huge triangle in masking tape on the floor. And each triangle had a flip chart. And one flip chart was a thought, the second flip chart was a feeling, and the third flip chart was an action or a behavior. So they had to write down a thought that made them unhappy. And one kid wrote, I'm stupid. A little girl wrote, I'm ugly. I don't have any friends. And then they had to run to the feeling chart and write down how they felt. And they said, I feel sad. I feel frustrated. I feel angry. Then they had to run to a behavior, and the behavior was I cry. And the other one said, I act out. Because, let's remember the thought, I'm stupid. Or I don't have any friends. So they were running thought, feeling, and then very quickly they realized the thought came first, and we just flipped it over. Let's say I'm so smart, and I got loads of friends. Everyone likes me. So now they're running to the feeling, and they're saying, well, I feel confident, I feel brave. When they ran to the behavior, the kid who said he was stupid said, I asked the teacher for help because I'm a smart kid, not because I'm smart. So I loved that he got it. So at that age they understood it's like a ladder: thought, feeling, action. Thoughts. You might think, I'm an idiot, so I feel terrible. So the action is I don't do anything because I'm an idiot. But if you flip that to actually I'm incredibly smart, I've got a really brilliant brain, so I feel pretty confident, and I ask for help and I do stuff and I put myself up because I'm smart. So it's making people understand that everything begins with a thought, which is very good news because your thoughts are yours to change, to upgrade, to update, and it's free and you can do it anytime and it works.